Dear Eritreans, this is an audio record of my political ideology called liberal democracy. I'm reading it here to provide it in audio form so that it can reach a larger audience. It was originally published in my blog www.testready.blog. If you are interested, I will give you the link for further details. Part 1. Voice of Liberal Democrats. Why liberal democracy is the best option for Eritrea and the Eritreans. It is not a surprise if I can claim that I am the first Eritrean who is openly advocating for liberal democracy political philosophy trained over Eritrea and the Eritrean mindset by replacing the most barbaric, totalitarian and inhuman political ideology of PFDJ. I'm also a self-proclaimed liberal democrat who is working to inject liberal democratic values in the Eritrean political landscape and gradually to be the strong foundational guideline principle of Eritrean democratic state. I came a long way to claim liberal democracy to be my political guidelines after years of struggle with my mind to liberate from PFDJ imposed mindset. It is no wonder that I started my public political activism by writing a series of 3 articles that focus on PFDJ political ideology and the PFDJ mindset. These articles were published at awate.com in the year of 2014, and if you are interested, it can be found through a Google search entitled Rule of the Jungle and the Quest of PFDJ Mindset, Part 1, Part 2, and Part 3. These articles are produced based on my experiences under the PFDJ regime, and from 2014 until 2016, I spent my time and energy fighting against the PFDJ political thinking through a fearless arguments now documented and discussed through the Awate forum. Most of the arguments were trying to expose how PFDJ system works. My argument was centered on demolishing PFDJ as a system. But there was one missing element, the element that I had no idea but a wish. Many people, including myself, were asking how to demolish it and what tools we have to replace it. Some people were constantly pushing the strategies that we have to weed out PFDJ and replace with one that can fulfill our long march to freedom. I was not in a hurry to propose a strategy. My argument was to have an effective strategy. We need a strong political ideology, otherwise it will be a reformation of the system without destroying the ideology. My reasoning was activism or events comes from projects come from programs come from strategies come from policies come from objectives come from goals come from mission comes from vision comes from an ideology comes from a philosophy, and philosophy comes from human being. After framing my thinking in this clear way, I went on contemplating what political philosophy should I come with so that I can have a clear vision about Eritrea. By doing so, after more than 3 years of reading and contemplating, I finally met face to face with liberal democracy. Barack Obama has lots of impact on me to come out with this political thinking. And later on, during the French 2017 presidential campaign, that I came to know what liberal values are through the hard-fought campaign of Emmanuel Macron, reading about French Revolution and its 1789 Declaration of Human and Citizen Rights, and the as well as the UN 1948 Universal Declaration of Human Rights, have also profoundly shaped my thoughts to be centered. Now I am the first Eritrean liberal democrat. To introduce you why I have embraced liberal democracy as my political philosophy and why I believe it is the best option we have to liberate Eritrean from the chains of PFDJ ideology and nationalistic mindset of most Eritreans. I will try to develop it fully in the next to be published articles. Part 2. In Part 1, I try to explain the long march to such an ideology that has a potential to answer my quest of Eritrean mindset and why an ideology is a necessary tool to come out with a vision that can be defined ideologically. In the discourse, I created a triangular shape of drawing human activism based on a political philosophy and an ideology produced. And in all these phases, human being is a main actor in framing its own ideology and the masterhead of all activism based on the projects available. In the second part, I will discuss what liberal democracy is and what values are encompassed within its basic principles. By doing so, I will try to create the link between Eritrean needs and the values that can be obtained from adopting liberal democracy. Liberal democracy definition. Liberal democracy is a democratic system of government in which individual rights and freedoms are officially recognized and protected, and the exercise of political power is limited by the rule of law. Oxford Living Dictionaries. From this definition, those who embrace liberal democracy vow to protect individual rights. By protecting these individuals, it gives freedom of the overall society through mutual respect. This is a crucial political stand that is highly demanded in countries where individual freedom is absent and mutual respect does not exist or is in danger. In addition, liberal democracy encourages political, social, and economic competition between political parties and pressure groups such as civic and NGOs. Basic beliefs of liberal democracy. Number 1. Universal suffrage. Liberal democracy believes that the government to be formed gets its legitimacy from the people through regular elections, called universal suffrage. All citizens who are legitimate to elect attend regular voting in a fair, free, and competitive elections to elect their good candidate in a secret ballot, regardless of race, gender, or property ownership. And the candidate who gets has a vote takes responsibility to govern the government. The elected government is accountable to the people for what it does, with Parliament holding it accountable. Number 2. Separation of power. To define the system in practice, liberal democracy draws upon a constitution, either formally written or uncodified, to delineate the power of government and enshrine the social contract. Liberal democracy stresses on the separation of powers, an independent judiciary, and a system of checks and balances between branches of government. The Constitution defines the democratic character of the state. The purpose of a constitution is often seen as a limit on the authority of the government. Number 3. Human rights, civic rights, civil liberties, and political freedom. Liberal Democrats believe that equal protection of human rights, civil liberties, and political freedoms for all people must be guaranteed under the Constitution, and the law to be written must protect these rights. Number 4. Freedom of press and free speech. Freedom of press and free speech is guaranteed. A central aim of liberal democracy as a system is that it tries to create more transparent governance system and the freedom of expression of thoughts that encourages citizens to engage at all levels. Freedom of press is also a vital component in the check and balance mechanism of the government actions by bringing important issues to the public attention. It can also be used as a tool to fight against corruption by allowing different actors to play an active role in exposing the government system. Number 5. Freedom of movement. Liberal Democrats believe that citizens have full freedom to movement within and outside the country. There is no question that how absence of freedom of movement limits freedom of people's freedom to live freely and work for their economic well-being. Absence of freedom of movement is a worse form of violating human rights. Therefore, liberal Democrats have genuine political interest to guarantee citizens their absolute freedom for movement. By doing so, individuals have an advantage of looking opportunities that might not be available in their local areas. Today, there are security issues which are putting some scrutiny procedures that may affect the kind of freedom of movement advocated by liberal Democrats for the last 2 centuries. Number 6. Free and competitive market. Since the introduction of liberal democracy as a political system, the world has witnessed massive increase in wealth across nations and advancement in living standard. People were allowed to own properties and make profit on sale. Trade between countries became simplified and predictable, and industrialization exploded massively to produce commodities for profit making. Investors got new freedom to look business opportunities via opportunity costs and resource-driven expansion. In this regard, there is no doubt for a necessity to embrace liberal democracy as it is the sole political ideology that guarantees market freedom. Though there is critics towards it as the main cause of economic stratification among citizens, it is a strong system that can provide opportunities for hard-working people. Number 7. Transparency. Without transparency, there is no accountability. Therefore, it is crucial to build a system that allows transparency. Citizens and press have a right to get information about their country, and information sharing is vital in the life of every citizen. According to principles of liberal democracy, the degree of transparency defines the level of government quality. The more the transparency is, the more accountable it becomes. Number 8. Liberal Democrats believe that each state has a sovereign power to govern its internal affairs without outside interference, where the sovereignty is safeguarded and protected under international laws. Having such self-governing power, it gives a relative guarantee from aligned forces by providing formal and legitimate recognition. As liberal Democrats believe on international treaties and the mutual respect between sovereign states, sovereignty has insignificant incidence to be endangered by outside force unless internal political dynamism leads to state failures leading to division. In case of disputes, the international community has a legitimate mandate to safeguard the sovereignty based on state demand and bring a peaceful resolution. Having this kind of sovereign power, it gives the government to focus on improving the livelihood of citizens without significant external threats and pressure. Here, it is important to mention sovereignty does not mean isolation. The country has national and international obligation to fulfill the right of its citizens. Number 9. Rule of law. Liberal Democrats strongly believe that law should govern a sovereign nation. By doing so, they refer to the influence and authority of law within society. Individual decisions has no room in governance unless it follows proper law-abiding process. Freedom in society is only subjected to laws made by a legislative body that apply to every citizen, to every individual citizen on equal basis without restricting upon liberty. Liberal countries may differ on the way they apply rule of law. However, as principle, international treaties and agreements have a central focus to incorporate with their domestic laws, and the Constitution becomes the supreme legal reference in writing domestic laws and delimiting government power. For example, France puts international regulations as top reference in applying rule of law. As national constitution becomes second to international convention, and the laws are outsourced from this domestic constitution. Liberal democratic countries. Today, most advanced countries are liberal democracies. According to the Freedom House, countries that fall in this category are from Europe, the European Union, Norway, Iceland, and Switzerland. Asia, Japan, South Korea, India, Taiwan, Israel. North America, the United States, Canada, and Mexico. South America, Uruguay, Costa Rica. Africa, South Africa, Australia, and New Zealand. It is not a surprise to have only one country as a liberal democrat in the continent of Africa. It is a prime proof to know how much liberal democracy is in creating an advanced countries. Liberal democracy and Eritrea. It is quite known that today Eritrea is under absolute dictatorship. The notion democracy is an alien word. In recent reports of United Nations Human Rights Council, Eritrean regime is committing widespread and systematic violations that amounted to serious crimes against humanity. It is therefore an obsolete to talk about liberal democracy. It is at the same time, there are significant forces that are fighting against the dictatorial regime to remove it from power and replace it by a democratic government. Nevertheless, there is no concrete political ideology to fight with to restore human freedom and create a government that respects rule of law. Many actors in the opposition camp are conservative, leaning to nationalist ideology with some remnants of socialist forces. Today, due to lack of well-defined ideology, the opposition camp is found in political chaos. Some extremists are also hatching based on identity and regional politics. So far, there was no political force that openly claims itself as a liberal democrat. Therefore, it is a historical record to claim myself as a liberal democrat. Being a liberal democrat is freedom by itself. The self-attained freedom will give power to inject liberal democratic values in the conservative society and thereby to change the dictatorial regime we have into a liberal one. I thank you so much. Part 3 will continue in the next record.